Mr. Mayor Rudolph Giuliani. How are you, sir? Thank you for being with us.
I'm fine. How are you?
Well, you know, listen, I am a little bit upset with the defeatist Republicans out there who are conceding this. I don't think we include Mitt Romney there. That's actually why I don't really think we, regardless of what happens in Georgia, I don't know if we have a Republican majority.
Defeatist or Republican? Which one?
What was that?
Defeatist or Republican? Which
okay, good point. Good point. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah, so, and Mitt Romney's in a class of his own. But I don't like seeing people concede this as though the media calls elections. And we talked about this earlier, Mayor Giuliani. They specifically preempted your press conference and Donald Trump's statement. It was at 11:30, 11:28 is when AP called it, and NBC at 11:25. Were you aware that it was just minutes before you took center stage?
No, I wasn't. I was not aware of that, but I'm not surprised by it. And when you consider the margin in Pennsylvania, it's 41,000 votes.
Right.
We have already, without really getting started, put at least, I'd say, 450,000 votes in question.
Now, what do you mean by that? Because we've gone through, and we've done some research ourselves, which way we could send you. Eventually, we've found over 1,600 people in Michigan who were born before the year 1902. We found obituaries. Really, we did, and I'm a comedy show. We found over 700 in Pennsylvania, dead people. And I can send these to you. We have receipts. We have their ballot received and their obituary. But when you say 450...
Send them to us. They'll all help.
I absolutely will.
I'll tell you what I'm talking about.
Okay, go ahead.
What I'm talking about is the counting of the mail-in ballots.
Yes.
From the very beginning, the whole plan of the Democrat Party was to steal this election with mail-in ballots. Mm-hmm. It's the way they steal. Before that, they used to hold back one of the counties in the state, and then when they needed enough votes, they produced enough votes to win. That's how Mayor Daley won the 1960 election against John Kennedy.
Right. So
the mail-ins were ripe for this. We had no observer, not a single observer, for over 350,000 mail-in votes that were counted.
Now, can you explain for people who don't know this, because Mayor Giuliani, you've been in government a long time and you've been a prosecutor, so you are, despite what the left may want to say, you're a brilliant man. A lot of Americans may not know what that means. Can you qualify what observer means?
What it means is, and it makes sense, right? When you have a mail-in vote, absentee votes are always counted this way. In order to verify the vote, there's a Republican on one side, a Democrat on the other side, and an election official on the other. He takes out the envelope. Everybody gets the chance to look at it. They make sure it's a real envelope. They open that up. They put it aside. Then there's an inner envelope. They make sure that that is properly processed to a specific election district. They look inside. They see a ballot. They don't look at who he votes for. And then they both approve it, and they put it in the voting pot. Either side can make an objection.
Right.
The Republican or the Democrat. And then they put those aside. And then those are examined by an independent judge. That did not happen here. The law required that it happen.
Wow.
The law required that every single ballot be observed, because these mail-in ballots are inherently prone to fraud. They're easy to send in 100 of them,
right? 200
of them,
right?
So this is a very important part of the process that removes the fraud.
Right.
In the case of 400 or so ballots, there was no Republican inspector. We have 50 different witnesses to establish that, and videotape.
Right. Yeah, and we ran some of that videotape.
And we went to court, and the court required that we be allowed 6 feet closer so we could see the ballots. Mm-hmm. When Corey Lewandowski and his colleagues went back with the court order, that we were put 6 feet closer, but the people counting the ballots were moved 10 feet further away.
Oh,
right. And he was threatened with arrest by the sheriff if he insisted on anything else.
Well, you should have just used reverse psychology and said, move them 10 feet away. Like, no, we're going to move them closer. That's probably what we're taking. Quarterback Garrett, we don't need to lower it when Mayor and I are speaking. You have me in the bottom corner right now. Go ahead.
The lawsuit we file tomorrow will allege what I just told you, and we will have a hearing and we will prove it. But by the time we're finished, that number is going to go way up, because we just started in Pittsburgh and we're up to 300. Right. We haven't looked at Lackawanna County, where we believe there are another couple of thousand. And we think the Philadelphia number is far in excess of 135.
Right, I can imagine.
So those ballots, as Ken Starr said just a few minutes ago on television, there's no choice with regard to those ballots. that were unlawfully counted.
Right.
There's no way to. They have to be thrown out.
Now, does this
almost like it's like a dead person voting?
Right.
Yeah. We don't know if it's a valid ballot or not.
And I'm quite sure there are a few of those in there as well. So I heard you mention yesterday at your press conference 650,000. I'm assuming that potentially compromised votes. And by the way, Mayor Giuliani has been very measured in this, where he said when they refuse to allow accountability, it gives the appearance of fraud. But we're not saying voter fraud. We're saying irregularities. It could be fraud. It could be incompetence. It could be system error. I want to be clear about that. People who care about free and fair elections should want every legal vote to be counted. And like I said, a champion fighter, they're never happy with a split decision win if it's in question. There's usually some kind of a rematch. So when you say 650,000, is that when estimating the total when you count from these other counties?
Yeah, that would be counting all of the other counties and all of the other methods of fraud that were involved. If we talk just about unobserved mail-in votes, it's probably going to reach about 500, 600,000.
Right.
Wow.
Now we're at 350,000 exact, where there's a witness you can tie to an affidavit. That witness is ready to go to court and swear under oath in front of a judge.
Right.
So we make our record. And that's what you would call it legally. Make our record.
Yeah.
Because it's going to go to the Supreme Court for sure.
And that total number that you're using, does that also include, in other words, would people add on top of that the ballots that came in after 8 p.m. or would you be including that in that total number because those again are ones that just simply couldn't be verified?
At this point, we don't have a total on that, but that will be included in the lawsuit because Justice Alito specifically ruled that those ballots should be put aside, and many of them were not put aside. Many of them were included in the actual vote total.
But how do you fix that then? How do you fix that? That's my question. That's where Americans feel hopeless if they were just funneled in there. Is there any way of knowing?
We have a record in which I think we can recreate most of those.
Good.
Okay.
A record was kept of those, so we can recreate most of those.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I know that you must know that's a question many Americans have. They say, well, they got away with it because they just sort of feathered in the ones that were taken in after 8 p.m. You feel pretty confident that you have a system that would be substantiated as evidence for most of them.
Yeah, honestly, not for all, but enough. I don't think we're ever going to catch all of the ballots that weren't inspected. But I think we're going to get pretty close. I think we'll get into the multiple hundreds. We're at 350 now. I wouldn't be surprised if we end at 500 or 600 or 700.
Right. Now, what would you say to some people who say, because obviously you've been focusing, Mayor Giuliani, on and the president's attorney, obviously, on Pennsylvania, again, because the media has called all of these states for Biden, where they would say, well, that doesn't matter. Joe Biden is still the winner, even if Pennsylvania were to flip. Is there something substantial that you witnessed, or do you plan on moving on to other states?
Well, Arizona's not over yet.
That's true.
And if he wins Arizona and Pennsylvania, he's pretty darn close. Arizona hasn't actually finished. It's probably going to finish within 10,000 votes.
Right.
There are allegations similar in Arizona to the ones that we have elsewhere, not in the same numbers, but then again, we don't have the same number to overcome. Right. We have to overcome 41,000 right now in Philadelphia. The most we may win Arizona. Right. But the most we'd have to overcome is 6,000 or 7,000. There are equally disturbing allegations that we are collecting, and that lawsuit will probably take a day or two more in Michigan. In Michigan, we have even stronger evidence of ballots that came in after, as well as ballots in which Democrats were allowed to cure and Republicans weren't. Okay. Because that's separate. What we've talked about primarily in Michigan is, the Dominion software, which flipped 6,000 votes for, Trump to Biden and back. You're talking about, again, the same situation in Michigan as Pennsylvania, meaning ballots coming in after, cured ballots. How much of a concern is it as well? And changed ballots. Ballots that actually, Democrats were given an opportunity to change, Republicans weren't. And the Dominion issue has not been fully investigated yet. Right. But that's a very, very live issue in Michigan. Right. So, but my point is, even just completely disregarding that, which led to the error of thousands of votes, there's still a lot of other irregularities in Michigan comparable to Pennsylvania, which isn't really so much the focal point of the Dominion software. You're saying all of the above have been happening in Michigan. Wow. Yeah. Correct. I will say this is speculate. Go ahead. the states in which there was so the states in which there is evidence that they interfered in the count and didn't allow Republicans to participate are Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, obviously.
Yeah.
Also Georgia.
Yeah.
Without any question. Those are all states that we now have affidavits from people saying that there was interference, and in Nevada.
Right. Well, of course, but Nevada, I don't think that really that goes without saying.
Nevada has every issue, by the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, Nevada has every issue. We went through some issues.
Put down every issue.
Right. Put down. I mean, does it surprise anybody where legalized gambling?
Actually, real dead people coming in and voting.
Right. Yes. Exactly. I said Howard Hughes voted in Nevada, but it was just soaked DNA.
Zombie voting.
Yes. I have a question actually here from one of my colleagues, Gerald. Gerald, you have Mayor Giuliani. Keep it very short. Keep it respectful. Because this is a respectful program, and he's America's mayor. Yeah. Gerald, come in here. I'm going to bring him over to my microphone to ask his question. I apologize. He's not as adorable as I am, Mayor, but he had, I think, a good question. All right, go ahead and ask him.
Can you hear me now?
Hey.
There we go. All right, perfect. So I was saying that the guidance that people were given on signatures, saying even if signatures don't necessarily match, even if the postmark can't be verified on the envelope, even if it doesn't even have a postmark, to treat it as an actual legitimate ballot. Are you guys working on that in several states as well?
Yes. Okay. That's also an issue that's come up. I can't tell you the numbers, but that's an issue that has come up that violates the rules of the legislature set down for the election. And any violation of the rules of the legislature leads to a disqualified ballot. After all, the rules here are set by the state legislature. And the state legislature ultimately has to certify the election.
Right.
So if their rules are violated to such an extent that it equals the margin, they're not going to be able to certify it, and they'll have to make a choice on their own.
Right. Let me ask you, this is totally separate from these are ballots that obviously would have to be invalidated. As someone who was born in Detroit, longtime Michigan residents, this is just my gut feeling. And I told people, everyone in this room, I said, listen, I cannot substantiate this, but having been there and having known people in Michigan, I just don't really get the feeling that Donald Trump lost Michigan in the way that he did, and especially knowing what we know about, again, the poll watchers and them putting up Bristol boards. If you have to go with your gut feeling, how much of this do you think, Mayor Giuliani, is just machines that don't work, systems that don't work, versus there potentially being actual nefarious activity? Because I think a lot of Americans are curious.
Well, I think the whole mail-in system from the very beginning was designed to give Democrats their fail-safe. That's why I think Hillary said, don't concede no matter what the vote is. Keep going. Look, you look at Pennsylvania the night of the election. He was ahead by 800,000 votes.
Yeah, it was crazy.
64% of the vote. It's almost mathematically impossible to make that up, and we'll have experts that say that. So you got to cheat in order to make that up.
Right.
So I think that the mail-in vote was always kind of a way the Democrats could cloud what they do in almost every election, which is they hold back a couple of key cities.
Right.
To try to see how much they have to make up. Now, if they have to make up too much, they usually give up. But if they're within 1 or 2%, they're going to try to steal the election. In this case, it was too important. Right. So they went for a big one. The reason the situation in Pennsylvania is so obvious is they had to make up 800,000 votes.
Right.
I mean, they even expanded the denominator. At one point, there were 94% of the votes cast.
Right.
They counted 40,000 more votes, and it went down to 90%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impossible.
Wow.
Now, how does that happen?
That means you brought more. That means you ship more votes in the back door.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I assumed, but I didn't want to speak out of turn. I know you're busy. Obviously, you're making the rounds, and I appreciate you spending the time with us. Let me ask you final.
We'll have more. We're getting complaints. I got to tell you, we're getting more complaints than we can handle. We're hiring more people to help us.
I thought you were about to say
it's overwhelming the number of complaints we're getting. I've never seen anything like this.
I thought you were about to say it's overwhelming the number of complaints we're getting being on this show, in which case I would readily understand. But let me ask you two final.
Haven't gotten one yet.
Okay, well, very nice. Well, that's because your interns are shielding you from the undoubted hate. Two questions. How do you expect this turning out like the end game? Do you think this ends up in a revote? Do you think it ends up in going to the courts? And then finally, for Americans who feel helpless at home, what can they do to to keep their chin up as well as assist in this process for transparency?
A couple of ways to assist. One, if they have any knowledge, to let the Republican chairman know in that state, or Republican leader know in that state. That'll get to us right away. And number two, if you feel inclined and to make a contribution to the fund so we can hire the lawyers that are necessary. I mean, this will be a challenge in probably 7 to 10 states. And more than likely, it'll get resolved in the Supreme Court.
Right. Yeah, that's what I think, too, as well.
Watch Good Morning Mug Club live every Monday through Thursday at 10:15 Eastern.